I started April 1st. We flew out April 17ish, something around then. By then, I was already down 14 pounds. So we're loaded with carbs, lots of pasta, lots of sauce, lots of treats. My nonna, my grandmother, was a really good baker, so grew up indulging myself in those types of items. I was pretty active in my 20s. I was into sports. I was playing hockey three times a week. So, what I was eating, I was essentially burning off. But once I got married and started to have kids, the sports kind of stopped, and I still kept eating as normal. I'm sorry, you can hear that's one of the kids in the background. So I just kept eating as normal, and then the other thing that really hurt as well was I am a father of 6. So there was 6 pregnancies, and you want to be the supportive husband and go run out to McDonald's and do those late night drive-through orders. And so you get stuff as well, and that's what ended up packing on the pounds for me. So it would have been about 2000, 2 years ago. So this 2019. It was March break. My wife's aunt was actually doing an event, fundraising event, an ice skating event. So it was the first time I pretty much laced up my skates in a good maybe 7 years. And it really hit me as I was putting my skates on. I really put on a lot of weight, and I need to start working on it. I was out of breath tying my own skates. So I knew I had to make a change. I was looking around at different types of diets, and one of the things that attracted me to keto was the foods that you can eat. So one of the I'm a big meat person, so when I started looking at, you can have bacon, you can have eggs, the bread. I know you like bacon. Bread, all the other items, I'm like, I can kind of do without. The pop, I knew I can do without because in the past for Lent, I've given it up. So I was going to start it. We were coming up on our 10-year wedding anniversary. We were going to go to Vegas, and I was planning to start it after the vacation. And as I was mentioning it to one of my coworkers at work, she basically said, well, why wait? So I started April 1st. So we went on our honeymoon in Vegas, and I stuck with it. And once I survived that, I knew I was going to be able to stick with it. And I think the other big thing that really helped with keto too was the results are pretty quick. So I started April 1st. We flew out April 17ish, something around then. By then, I was already down 14 pounds. So I knew it was working. I ended up, so my starting weight was 188 pounds. I'm a shorter guy. I got as low as 132.
Wow.
And now, I was talking to my one of my good friends he's actually a strong man, and we were giving stories of diets, and I told him I think I can get to 125, and he kind of put his hands up and said, why do you need that? You're not a UFC fighter. You don't need to get that low. And that kind of clicked in me. And then I realized, hey, I'm in my maintenance stage, and I can start working, introducing a little bit more carbs in. The big one was just introducing more strength training in.
Yeah, so basically I've pretty much been fighting obesity since probably 2005.
Thank you for coming on here. It's a new show, but hopefully we can reach a few people and tell a few stories and
Yeah, absolutely.
and help some people. So yeah, I was thrilled when you offered to come on and tell your story, because I've heard it a couple of times and it's definitely worth telling. So I guess why don't we just get started, and if you want to start where you want to start and just let us know how you got started with keto, or how you got to that point in the first place.
Yeah, so basically I've pretty much been fighting obesity since probably 2005. Long story short, came to a head in 2010. I tipped the scales about 600 pounds, had weight loss surgery. We had, actually, my wife and I had the sleeve gastrectomy in 2010 or 11. 11, 3 weeks apart from each other. So long story short, got down to as low as 400 pounds. And basically just old habits crept back in. And pretty much from that point, I got to the point where I was about 520 pounds in August of 2018. My doctor said, hey, I want you to try keto. Gave me a book to try, which is Simple Keto. And the rest is history. I've had some rough patches where I've gained weight. And actually, if you've listened to my story, I've talked about it a couple times about how I've struggled with mental health, and a lot of the weight gain is just psychotropics. So, just basically being on medication, eating. So that's pretty much where I'm at now. I got back down below 400 pounds last week. I was in December. I was as high as 442. 442 is where I think I was in December. And I finally said to my doctor, I'm like, you need to take me off this one medication. It's basically causing me to gain weight, and slowly I've been losing. I started carnivore back in January, and I've lost 30 pounds since then.
I mean, it makes a world of difference.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that can be the difference between success and failure.
So that's usually where I like to start, is just asking how you got started, or a little bit of background and why you needed to get to that point where you started keto in the first place.
That's pretty. So for me, starting keto, I was over 420 pounds. I needed to have a hernia surgery. I had an umbilical hernia, and I needed to have surgery, and I needed to lose weight before I had the surgery. So I went ahead and we started like low carb keto, and I was able to get down about 30 pounds from when I started seeing the doctor to have the surgery till I had the surgery. So I was able to get under 400 pounds to have the surgery. And even still, that was pretty rough, like a pretty rough 2 weeks, like the recovery from that and being so big, and like, I had to lay on my back to sleep, and the complications that kind of come with that when you're so big. So, that was one of the big things. And I didn't really kind of know, like, it was 2016. So there wasn't as much information out there at the time as there is now. Like now it's like the golden age of keto. There's like so much stuff. Like you can't throw a stick at a store and not hit something with a keto branding on it.
Yeah,
then there was nothing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there was very limited information. Luckily, I found the Two Keto Dudes podcast, and I binge listened to all that and started getting myself into keto. And that's really my beginning of my journey, just, out of necessity. I didn't want to die.
Yeah, well, it's definitely a good starting point. It's when you're forced to do something, at least you found a good way to start with it. And that podcast with Two Keto Dudes, I've done the same thing. I've listened to every episode of it, and they had a lot of good guests and information on there to get started with for sure.
They even talk about me on their 100th episode.
Oh, do they?
Yeah. Because I had lost over 100 pounds by the time that episode was going to air. So they went on their Discord, and they had people send in pictures and like a description of yourself, and they mentioned me on that. It was pretty cool.
So have you been doing keto like the whole time since 2016? Or?
Yeah. I mean, I kind of came for the weight loss and stayed for everything else.
When we recognize that all of us are, I say that a lot, and it sounds cliche, but I mean it sincerely, but we all are in this together on some level, and everybody's story is different. And yet there's so many parts of our stories through health and weight loss, and whether it's keto or something else, like we're all doing this, we're all trying to better who we are. And so, you hope that the dots connect for people as we share our stories.
Good.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is an honor.
Yeah, well, thanks for coming on. It's I guess I was just looking back, and it was just over a year ago that you were on Gormy's podcast there.
Yeah, that's I think how we initially connected, right?
Yeah, I listened to that podcast, and that's when I found you on Instagram.
Yeah, that's great, man.
Yeah, no, it's great to talk to guys like you on this kind of platform. To I don't know how many people it's really reaching, but well, like I said, if you can reach one person, that's worth it, right?
I absolutely agree. Even when I post stuff, I'll get one guy or gal reaching out and just saying, this is exactly what I needed today. And so for me, a lot of times those posts are for myself. It's a way of me just kind of getting some of that stuff out. And so when I hear that it helps somebody or inspired somebody,
sure, like
it's completely worth it to me.
Yeah. No, I hear you. I started Instagram on just why not?
Right.
But then it turned into something where, you do get that reaction, not all the time, but sometimes you get people that honestly seem to think it made a difference. So, that's all we can hope for, right?
Yeah, that's all we can. When we recognize that all of us are, I say that a lot, and it sounds cliche, but I mean it sincerely. But we all are in this together on some level, and everybody's story is different, and yet there's so many parts of our stories through health and weight loss, and whether it's keto or something else, like we're all doing this, we're all trying to better who we are, and so. Yeah, you hope that the dots connect for people as we share our stories and stuff.
I hear you. Well, speaking of that, why don't we start off with your story, like a little bit about your background and what led you down this keto lifestyle path.
Sure. How far back do we want to go?
Go wherever you want. It's just a conversation. So
yeah. Okay, man. Yeah. Well, you know what? I think it's important to go all the way back to my childhood, because I think a lot of things were formed in those early years for me. I was, born and raised in Southern California, and it was just me and my mom. And to this day, I've actually never met my biological dad, and so it was just her and I, and I think mom was doing, the absolute best that she could, raising me and stuff. And so a lot of times she was working multiple jobs, 3-4 jobs at a time just to raise me and stuff. And so I think a lot of times we were just kind of running around and so food and dinner and, all those things were, a lot of times it was fast food and a lot of times it was too much. And so early on, I established just kind of a poor relationship with food and, that kind of thing. But that, it's crazy when we look at those times in our life and just how so much of, everybody like teases about their childhood stuff, but yet it had such an impact, on us. And it didn't really become an issue for me until I was a little older in life. I wasn't heavy growing up or, anything like that, but it did affect me. And I realized that when I got older, when I would deal with any kind of stress or feeling of out of control, it took me right back to that 9, 10, 11-year-old child that a lot of times I think when things were stressed in our life because she was trying to do the best that she can as a mom, single mom, a lot of times it was medicated with food, like, hey, everything's going to be okay. Let's get ice cream. Hey, everything's going to be okay. Let's go grab Mexican,
Mm-hmm, yeah.
And so that kind of just internally became like such a default for me as an adult. And, but then as an adult, you have choices to make. And, and I got into working with students, I've done student ministry for the better part of 30 years. And if you know anything about, working with students, it's nachos and pizza and Mountain Dew and, you're eating on the go and you're doing all that kind of stuff, hanging with teenagers and stuff. And so that just kind of became, I was trying to be one of the kids, and so I would eat like them and act like them and, all that stuff. And, and then one day you wake up and you're almost 400 pounds. Now that's over the course of 30 years. I kind of gave you a nutshell, with that, but really that's my relationship with food was just always poor, and I never really took care of myself, and I just yo-yo diet, for all those 30 years. I'd gain weight, I'd lose weight, and I did everything out there. I did the Weight Watchers and Lindora, if you remember that one. There was just so many different ones that I would do, and I was successful at them, when I would actually commit to them. But over time, the weight would come back on, and it was never something that was a actual, a lifestyle change. I always tell people that, behavior modification, we can modify our behavior for a short amount of time. But if we actually never change, like what's going on in here or what's going on in here, it's never going to be lasting. And that can be applied to anything, right? To our weight, to our relationships, to the way that we do our job or we don't do our job in life. If we don't really actually have a change of heart, it's never going to change.